Today, I saw this screenshot from Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Now, I don't know what this crossover is about. I don't play these Final Fantasy mobile spin-off games, but I do love Final Fantasy XIII and its series protagonist, Lightning. And in this little screen cap, Lightning's speech got me thinking. Well, honestly, it got me giggling at first. Then it got me thinking. Lightning really went from Sergeant Don't Resist to ACAB in a matter of days. For purely selfish reasons, of course. Where she stood as a Guardian Corps Security Regiment Sergeant, she saw herself as different from her sister branch of SciComm. She even makes a point of that to Saz in the beginning of the game.
The Purge was SciComm. Private Sanctum troops, not the Guardian Corps.
Why? A way of washing her already dirty hands clean from the stains of the Purge? Because, in her reasoning, both Guardian Corps and SciComm might serve the same master, that being the Sanctum. She and her squad protect and serve the people of Bodom. They're regular people. And look at Lieutenant Adomar. He's kind, he took her in. They didn't oppress the masses under the guise of protecting Cocoon. Unless it was Snow and Team Nora, but back to the point. Try as she might, Lightning cannot truly separate the two. Guardian Corps and SciComm are both branches to the same tree, the Sanctum. Now, I need to take a second to explain the Sanctum and its two military branches, as well as how it stands as a governing body, because this video is about Final Fantasy XIII's lore. What I won't be doing at this time is explain ACAB in its entirety. Why, you may ask? Because I don't believe I'm educated enough to explain the intricacies of it in a way that won't take away from the topic of this video, being Final Fantasy XIII, or my not-so-great explanation of ACAB by itself. What I will be doing is linking some articles and channels that educate about ACAB and Abolition much better than I can at this moment. I will put those in the description. So for now, I'm working on a if you know kind of basis, and I hope that maybe, if you don't know, my analysis here would pique your interest enough to learn more about it. That being said, there are some spoilers ahead, and if you don't want to listen to my dive into the politics of the Sanctum, you can skip ahead to here. Now, let's go. The Sanctum is the supreme theocratic governing body of Cocoon. It is heralded by a Primarch, who is a mix between a king and a pope, as only he can allegedly communicate with Cocoon's leading governing demigod, the fal'Cie Eden. As it works, the Primarch consults the fal'Cie for advice and guidance as he leads the Sanctum with extreme judiciary and legislative power. That is the hand that guides SciComm through Colonel Jill Nabat and holds the Guardian Corps through Brigadier General Cid Raines. These two military branches, as we learned, serve the same king, though to different degrees. One could say here's where Lightning got it half right. SciComm stands for Public Security and Intelligence Command, or Public Safety and Intelligence Command, depending on the game. For this video, let's highlight the public safety part of SciComm. Because this military branch was made sometime after the War of Transgression, it was allegedly made on the foundation of protecting Cocoon from Pelagian invasion and influence. As an intelligence command during peacetime, one could imagine how it focuses efforts on controlling Cocoon's anti-Pulse narrative through enforcing the culture around serving their supreme god, Lindsay, through the demigod fal'Cie and Blessed Primarch. Meanwhile, the Guardian Corps exists as the militarily more active branch, serving as police and peacekeepers whose focus is more domestic. You have the Wide Area Response Brigade, also known as the Cavalry, that serves Cocoon across jurisdictions with shock teams. Then, you have the Provincial Guardian Corps, that serves towns like Bodom or Palampolum, for example. And then they branch off again, into non-residential battalions that serve as security to prevent wildlife from entering residential areas. Some even work security for SciComm's wildlife research and bioweapon development facilities. See, while they are different, these two branches do work together. While SciComm handled the Purge, SciComm and the Guardian Corps investigated the vestige in Bodom and the possible infection from it. A vestige that they planted, mind you, a false flag excuse for the mass execution that follows in the Purge, but I digress. What would it mean to investigate an infection? That would entail not just the building, but everyone who came in contact with it. And when we know how rabid Cocoonians are when it comes to the idea of pulse anything, let alone how soldiers would be, how cruel SciComm can be with the help of Guardian Corps, well, you can imagine. In her argument with Sarah, Lightning threatens,
If you really are a l'Cie, it's my job to deal with you.
Did she believe Sarah was l'Cie? No. Lightning herself tells us so. Would Lightning actually physically hurt her sister or allow her to be purged? Obviously not. But out of all the threats, all things she could have returned with, she highlighted what entails of her job, what she can do if duty calls. This friction between the sisters is in line with the idea that the job itself trains the individual into being complicit with the brutality and, let's say here, extreme Polesian prejudice. From what we know from later games and novellas, Lightning didn't always behave like this. After being orphaned, a part of her died and was replaced with responsibility. And the career she took on only hardened her more drastically in the negative that increasingly drew the divide between the sisters. Instead, she feuds with Lightning, the aggressive, neglectful cop who she has to plead to for sympathy in her lowest moment since their parents died. Here is where I need to pull back a moment. Pull back to just a few days before the Purge, when Sanctum officially starts investigating the Bodum vestige, because it's important for an honest conversation of what's to come. During the fireworks show on day 11, Lightning is approached by her Lieutenant Adomar. He's a friendly man, a father figure of sorts for a young Lightning fresh out of high school. He's the reason she's in the service at all. Orphaned and taking care of her younger sibling, Lightning needed to provide for them both, and Adomar was there, employing her as soon as possible. He gave her a sense of purpose and direction. For a young woman not yet 21 and being the sole breadwinner, this job gave the sisters a house on the beach and allowed Lightning to be able to afford to send Sarah to a university in Eden. This is what Lieutenant Adomar had allotted to her in her time of need, and this is what a lot of these service branches do for people in similar situations, offer an oasis of structure and pay for those who seriously need a job. And for that, it's good for the moment. Why am I bringing this up? Because Adomar is, from what we get from Lightning, the good cop amongst the bad apples. He was good to her and her life, and held a good amount of disgust for Sanctum, of which he tried to protect her from by advising her to stay out of Sanctum business and think of her sister. Because when people are rounded up by Guardian Corps and Sanctum alike, and sent to the purge trains, a simple "I'm sorry, I'm just doing my job" doesn't suffice for the mass murder event that takes place at the Hanging Edge. The Guardian Corps were exempt from Bodum's purge, but that doesn't stop Lightning from her pursuit of Sarah. Here, being Guardian Corps did her no service, so she threw it aside and resigned, not because of belief, but out of necessity. It is known amongst the Guardian Corps that Sanctum are no friends of the people. Lightning hates Sanctum and holds obvious disdain for the Sanctum, seeing their brutality here during the Purge. But she's no savior, and she doesn't denounce the Sanctum or the system just yet. When we see her again in the vestige, she pleads with whoever's listening to allow her through the magic gates. We see that she's not completely opposed or disgusted by Polesian things. She can negotiate with the truths Sanctum taught her regarding Pulse. It's not until Sarah's crystallized and Lightning turns her rage towards the fallacy Anima we get to see her real stance. And her stance, on anything right now, is Sarah or bust. Kill the fallacy, because it caused this to happen to Sarah, and kill the fallacy because it caused all the bloodshed here in the Hanging Edge. Small picture. Personal. Her goals still align with the Sanctum. It's a bit further in the game. After she becomes an enemy of the state, pieces start falling into place for her. And she realizes it's not just that she's l'Cie, it's not just some people in the Sanctum, it's everything. The corruption is systemic. From the Polesian fallacy to Cocoon's fallacy Eden, they're the same. The Sanctum is at the core of the rot that spreads through Cocoon. Someone bigger is pulling the strings and perpetuating the lies. It trickles down like water through the ranks. And this isn't something that can be changed from the inside. She understands this way before the group of l'Cie faced the Primarch and learned the truth about Cocoon and Pulse, about the war of transgression that precedes all the events of 13, about the grand master plan laid out by Barthandelus. And what might you say about the fact that Lightning may be spurred on by the death timer branded to her breast? Well, Lieutenant Adomar made a similar choice, uninfluenced by such deadly circumstances, to leave the Sanctum as well, though we learn that much later. He figured it out, but had no power to change anything really. But that didn't stop him from leaving well enough alone and continuing on. Serve the Sanctum, after knowing what it was, what it did? No. He resigned and left the service. I'm sure Adomar would be proud of Lightning and company for what they had fought. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, Lightning's rebellion is with fate, the demigods, and greater deities that rule over everything, and that extends throughout the 3 games. But Lightning's story is one of rebellion against control, oppression, and the lies of its overruling theocratic government built by them and their beliefs. Again, she never brings up the idea of just a few bad apples, or how those in the Sanctum are victims of the fallacy the same way those that were killed in Hanging Edge were, or how she and other Polish Enlistee were. When Lightning wakes up from the haze of Cocoonian life, she never turns back. She can't. And she makes her own path against the grain on her own, to challenge the status quo of Cocoon while marked as an enemy of the state, until she achieves the absolute abolishment of the Sanctum, the system that oppresses and terrorizes both Cocoonians and Polsians alike. There's an article titled Final Fantasy XIII Demands We Fight for What Matters, and in it, Brandon R. Chin writes, "The theocratic technocracy of Cocoon in Final Fantasy XIII outwardly seems absurd and fictional until you begin to make educated comparisons to real-world examples. Those in power are always looking for an excuse to flaunt that power, othering their enemies by labeling them as illegal, alien, or subhuman. This probably sounds familiar, too familiar. In our internet age, we are more connected than ever, and atrocities are seen daily on our social media and news. I haven't been able to escape it. I can't look away since I've seen it, and I won't." Brandon continues to write, "I'm not asking you to make crass comparisons between real-world events and fictional stories. I'm telling you to open your eyes and become radicalized by the stories you claim to love. Separating Final Fantasy from its political and social inspiration is an absurdity propagated by the most insufferably illiterate members of the gaming subgroup. This is something I want to establish right out the gate here on my channel. I've always used fictional media to help me process the goings-on in the world. Let it help me explore those ideas and stories until I learn to understand the context and themes coming through them. I didn't fully understand the themes of 13 when I played it as a teen. No, 13 hit my soul in a way I needed. It set off a chain reaction in me to hold on and keep moving forward despite the circumstances and what I considered my fate at the time. But now I can look back at my favorite game and say, hey, this story of rebellion is much more relevant than I had realized before. And Lightning's transformation from cop to abolitionist to god killer is crazy, actually. Well, the cop to abolitionist part is crazy, not so much the god killing. Or, just like my namesake here, I also didn't fully understand the full implications of the story of revolutionary girl Utena. But it moved 6-year-old me at the time, then 13-year-old me, and as an adult now, I can finally see and appreciate the nuance and tragedy of the story, and where these stories helped radicalize me as I grew older. There are many things I can write or ramble about when it comes to Final Fantasy XIII, my all-time favorite game. But just for today, I wanted to highlight Lightning's journey in a way some of us may not have noticed. Lightning Farron grew from cop to abolitionist in days, and dedicated herself to destroying a broken system from the outside. This part of her character arc is significant in how she sees the world for the rest of her existence. Even though this video is about Lightning, I would be remiss to imply she was the only cog in the group of fugitives to smash the world's shell. Brandon highlights this when he writes, "All of these characters are messy, flawed, and broken. Final Fantasy XIII's reluctant heroism is a far cry from the insistence on placing importance on birthright and individualism. Final Fantasy XIII immediately rejects these notions, forcing mostly ordinary people into the shackles of fate and determinism, taking potshots at the very ideas of heroism and societal duty. The cast inevitably forges their path, even when the results feel overly familiar. Because, even when it felt hopeless, like they were losing their momentum in the face of the absolute power of the Sanctum and at the resistance of Cocoonian society, they kept fighting until they found more hope." Brandon closes his article in words that only grow more significant every day. "These are confusing, painful, straining times. Most of us are in an endless loop of absorption versus negation. Do I wake up and read all the bad news? Or do I selfishly ignore the suffering of the world for my mental health? How do I balance my empathy with my endurance? I long for the answer. My advice does not extend far beyond play more video games. All I can say is, when it comes to times of extreme xenophobia, fascism, cruelty, apathy, religious extremism, and mind-numbing nationalism, hold strong. There's a reason a game like Final Fantasy XIII means so much to you and me, and that funny feeling is only the start of great change."
If you made it to the end, thank you. Creative media has always been something I found myself looking towards. It's something I live vicariously through to remind myself of certain truths. It's been something so vital and important to my person that when I attach to something and it speaks to me, it becomes a part of me, body and soul. So, here we are. Welcome to my channel. Here, I'll be rambling about things I love and try to play with the sense of meaning it gives to me. It helps make everything feel like it has a purpose. Because not all is lost. We don't think like that. We'll make the impossible possible, together. And maybe I'll see you in the next one.